Hey YouTube, Tire Metalhead Weatherman here. Very active day on my part. Very active day with the weather. A lot going on there. So this upload may end up being a little bit late. May also be a little bit long, but we're going to do the best we can to kind of keep the time down. I know I've been saying that and still making 30-minute videos, but daggone, I'm still trying. But anyway, let's go ahead and take a look at the satellite, get an overview of what's happened throughout the day. And there has been quite a lot. We'll just start from east and move our way to the west. This storm system, relatively minute, despite how impressive it is. It's causing showers and storms and some snow, most likely over towards Maine today. Some parts of the Adrian Decks might have seen some action, but it was relatively minimal. Then as we move further and further over to the east, we have this storm system right here, which actually had a cold core severe event, which dropped a little bit of hail and dropped a couple of tornadoes. One over towards Williamsburg, Iowa. It's a cold core tornado, and it was a very pretty looking tornado. No reports of damage that I can tell as of this time. We'll have to see what happens here. I think this was mainly in a rural area, thankfully, but we'll have to see what tomorrow brings. Also, didn't mention too much about this setup due to the fact that, well, really, when I was looking at the model runs earlier this morning, they were kind of trending away from there being a cold core event. The dew points and moist and the temperatures just weren't really there. They weren't in the right location on the models. They were all the way down here when they ended up being over here. And this is where our tornadoes ended up forming, is right around where I have the cursor. Because with these cold core setups, you don't necessarily need a juicy atmosphere, juicy temperatures. It's a little bit tricky sometimes because really a lot of the thermodynamics are going to be based off of the vorticity right here that's coming from the low itself. That's where most of the lift comes in, and etc. Then before we know it, we have a couple of cold core tornadoes. Sometimes they can be really strong too. But anyway, I'm nerding out a bit. Didn't really mean to do that, but that's what happened with this setup today and why I didn't talk about it too much. Then we look over towards the southwest here. Atmospheric river in action right there. You can see it right there, clear as day. Shower, storms, snow over towards Arizona and parts of northern New Mexico here. Then we have a southern piece of that atmospheric river coming in to the southeast. This will be causing some showers and thunderstorms for the southeast tonight and into tomorrow. And then we have a little cyclonic piece of energy right here that's coming into California, causing more rain showers, a little bit of snow around the Sierra Nevada regions, and also around the Rockies. Rockies look like they're catching the worst of it this time around. And then, of course, we have our next system that's spinning over here. We'll have to watch and see what that ends up doing. So, another big topic here is our day 3 slight risk. There's no severe weather expected in the next couple of days, so we can just focus in on this day mainly. But our slight risk hasn't really changed too much. The same cities that have been in there the last couple of days are still there. Maybe a little bit of a further extension back to the west here. We can look at areas like Longview and Lake Charles involved in there as well. Beaumont, Texas too. But but now we have a marginal risk now to go with this since we're within 72 hours. This stretches as far back as Pasadena, Texas, over towards Houston as well. And this stretches all the way up through the Ozarks, including the cities of Little Rock, all the way into Jackson, Tennessee here. So we'll have to watch Jackson and Memphis for the threat of severe weather as well, albeit a slightly lower risk than what we're seeing with this slight risk. Main threat with this is mainly going to be damaging winds, but there is a little bit of a variable here with the mid-level latitudes. If we can get a little bit more clarity on the mid-level temperatures, that could be a very big determining factor on what other hazards may be possible with this event. This could very well turn into a nowcast situation, just like last week, where we ended up ultimately seeing a whole tornado outbreak out of this. I don't think the dynamics are quite the same as this, but we can't rule it out. So we're going to have to just watch this really closely with bated breath. That being said, let's go ahead and take a look at the models. We're going to mainly be looking at the euro today since we're within mid to short range now at this point. So we're going to start out with the vorticity map, getting a good indicator of what's going on here. And this is heading into the evening hours of the 17th and into the 18th. This is when our low gets closed off and really starts to develop. And by the time we get into the afternoon hours, we get these little segments of pop-up storms forming into lines right here. This mainly has a linear look to it, but we can kind of see over towards eastern Texas, we have a little bit more curvature with these storms. These storms may have a little bit higher likelihood of tornadic activity, where the forcing is a little bit lighter. But this is quickly going to end up turning linear as this storm system progresses further off to the north and east. As time goes on, a line forms towards southern Mississippi. We'll have to watch for the development of maybe a few supercells embedded in the line. And then the same can be said towards northwestern Alabama. But by that point, I'm also thinking that the parameters are really going to start to fall apart as we start to get away from that forcing. Temperatures aren't going to really be juicy because this isn't a cold core setup. This is a warm style, a little bit more of a classic of what you would call a classic severe setup, or trying to be a classic severe setup, I would say. So this low pressure heads off and becomes a pretty significant winter storm from the looks of it over towards this region here, and brings a lot of cold air in with it. And before we know it, this one's out of here, and then we're looking at the next. So now that we've looked at this, let's go ahead and take a look at the temperature. We'll start to take a look at our soundings as well as we roll this forward here. We're actually going to set this one into a slower loop, so to speak, and we'll move this forward here. Temperatures will start to warm up, especially as we get into the early hours of the 18th. And this is right around lunchtime where we're going to start to see those storms fire. There isn't a super big warm sector over past central Arkansas here. Warm sector is really going to exist around this region, and this is where I'm most concerned about severe activity. So we take a look at the sounding here. We have a marginal tornado threat. It's going to be a very messy storm mode based on the mid-latitudes. But those dew points look like they start to really taper off here, but the lapse rates aren't very impressive towards the mid-levels. And this is what the Storm Prediction Center was talking about in their synopsis. That, and also a limited amount of cape available. So this is going to be a tricky kind of setup. And even then, the theta isn't that impressive either. It's only at 32. 30 will give you thunderstorms with a chance of severe. It's just at a 32, so not super impressive. I mean, this setup right now is not super impressive. Neither was the last setup. It was a little bit better, but not by much. But look what the result was with that. So we're gonna have to still watch this closely. Can't let our guard down. And then as we go forward, this moves further and further off to the east. That warm sector really starts to fade out once we get into the evening and overnight hours around the southeast, and this storm system will practically be out of here by Thursday and into Friday. It isn't a robust cold front or anything by any means, so we're not super concerned with that. By tomorrow, I'm not or the following day after this event, not really concerned about much of anything. Look at the dew points at this point. We're looking at 40-degree dew points, not sufficient for severe weather at all. Lapse rate of nearly dry atmosphere at the mid-level, so this is just going to rain itself out pretty much after Wednesday here, to be honest. So we'll watch this head out, and then we'll see the cold front come in behind it, and a cool down will start to take place for the weekend. So let's go ahead and try and hone in as well on our moist sector here and see if there's any inkling of a window where we could end up seeing some kind of severe threat beyond just damaging winds. And even then, the damaging wind threat itself doesn't seem like it's super robust, so to speak. I'm going to jump this forward a bit, and when we get into the early hours of the 18th, we can see that our moist sector is really abundant over towards the coast of Texas and heading into Louisiana. This is about 7 a.m., 6 a.m. Central Time. And when we get towards the early afternoon hours, right against that cold front here is where we're getting those really moist dew points. And there's a really good moist sector, but not a strong warm sector to coincide with it. The forcing is very strong, so storms will still pop off from this, but as a result, it's just not going to be anything like the last system, I don't think, as of right now. Of course, we got a major uptrend over the last like few hours leading up to the event. So again, we can't sleep on this just yet. But I do have a slightly better feeling with this than I did the last system. But like I said, it's a pretty good moist sector with this one. The warm sector in general isn't super impressive. So there's a lot of doubt to be had with this still. Of course, what happens in the mid latitudes is going to be a key factor. Let's go ahead and look at the low level jet and also even the mid level jet, because I think these will be telling factors behind what ends up happening next with this. So here we are moving into the 18th here. Really strong jet streak that pops up here, about 50 knots around this region. And this works its way off to the north and east, and it really becomes a little bit discombobulated with where the greatest severe threat is. This is about, if I can see correctly, I think it's OOZ here, which would be about 7 o'clock. And I mean, there's still a pretty strong sector around this region, but it isn't nearly as robust as the last one. And even that one wasn't that robust either, to be honest with you. Just that system in general was just able to get its act together at the last minute. Not to say that this one can. I know I keep repeating myself, but it was really surprising last week what ended up happening. So there are a few streaks here. We'll have to watch those. Again, I'm thinking that mainly the temperatures are going to be a little bit more favorable further to the south, but the forcing could be an inhibiting factor with that. All right, so once this system worked its way out, low level jet kind of fades out, and that's going to be the end of that. And we'll have to watch towards this week for cooler temperatures. Not this, and maybe another severe system towards the beginning of next week. That's going to be another video in and of itself. That being said, here's a look at the mid-level jet. Mid-level jet should be pretty sufficient, I would say. In fact, it's pretty strong. We're getting into the 65, 70 knot region around here. So the shear is there. The temperatures are going to be a key factor here. When we look at the temperatures at the mid levels, we're still kind of sitting in that, I think this is also measured in Celsius, by the way it is. We're going to be sitting in that 5 to 10 Celsius degree range. We want to be a little bit closer to 10 to 15, so to speak. Or actually, we want to be a little colder than that. I got things mixed up a little bit. But right around this region here, I think we're going to be a little bit too warm in the higher levels, where we're sitting at actually 5 degrees Celsius. We kind of want to be a little bit below freezing. Maybe -5 would be good. But I think that cold air is going to be lagging a little bit too far behind. And as a whole, this is going to throw the dynamics off for a tornado threat or multi-hazard threat like last system. But again, this can easily change. This is not set in stone, so we'll have to watch this really closely. And this is ultimately what's going to lead to the lack of CAPE with this storm system as well. When we look at the CAPE, not really too much to be had here. This is the mixed layer coming into the afternoon hours of Wednesday, and we're barely reaching 1,000 right now. Of course, the Euro does not really pick up on CAPE like some of the shorter range models like the NAM or the HRRR. So it'll be interesting to see the contrast between the two. I don't really think there will be much one given what we just saw with the temperature at the mid levels. So that being said, CAPE doesn't really hang around either. And before we know it, this storm system's out of here. Its severe potential is just about gone as quickly as it comes along. So, with that being said, we also have to keep our eye on what's going on out west, of course. So, we're going to go to our surface maps and take a look at more of the rain and wintry threat with this as well. So, here we are looking at the precip here. Here's our next storm system rolling in right now. And this is heading into the morning hours of the 18th. Line of storms forms. Is a little point here where there could be a couple of potentially tornadic systems here. I think it'll be relatively minimal. Again, given the fact that the colder air around here isn't really going to be meshing well with that warm air. There's too much warm air aloft to really have things going right now, and it's kind of showing on here. So we look at this line of storms right around the northern part of Alabama. I'm concerned about damaging winds, and of course through Louisiana, of course. Then we'll watch this storm system quickly weaken. This becomes a pretty robust winter storm, especially for the Great Lakes regions. And then this kind of falls apart as it heads further to the north. We still would have to watch the interior Northeast and the Great Lakes off to the east, like Ontario and Erie, for snow. But beyond that, I'm not really expecting a whole lot out of this. So now that we've looked at that, we also have to keep an eye on what's going on out west. There's still some rain and snow, but for the most part, this should be dying out throughout the day and evening tonight over there. And then by tomorrow, it should be relatively clear, and then the concern will switch more so towards the central part of the U.S. And then we'll have to watch this little weak shortwave that brings a little bit of additional snow south of the Rockies here towards northern Arizona towards early Friday morning. So let's go ahead and shift this over to our snowfall totals here. We're also going to look at our rainfall totals in a minute, or actually we're going to look at those now. All right, so here's what we're looking like at on our quantitative precipitation here. Rainfall amounts are somewhat impressive, not nearly as impressive as some of the other systems that we've seen in either east or west. We can still see areas up that could get up to about 2 inches. Some spots getting closer to 3 over towards the south and east, especially towards Arkansas, where those storms will be training over the same areas. But other than that, I mean, it's relatively limited. This is a little bit of a break for some of these guys over here. I mean, we're still getting rainfall, which isn't great news considering all the damage that's been done here. But at least we're not getting those ridiculous 10-inch rainfall amounts that we were getting. But there's still plenty of moisture that's been going around and still a bit more to go. But I do think we're starting to get on a decline with this finally. Some of this over here, of course, is going to be moisture towards snow. This is quantitative precip. So we always have to discount these areas that could be below 32 degrees, of course, because then that precipitation will freeze. So, of course, areas towards the northeast, we could see about 2 inches of precipitation. But when we compare this to snowfall, this is going to look a lot different, especially for these areas off the Great Lakes. Let's go ahead and actually shift that over to frozen precipitation. Look at the Cucchiera. So here's what the Euro's looking like. Actually, some big snowfall totals could be ahead for Nebraska once again. And then, of course, towards the Rockies, we have some pretty significant snowfall possible there. Places getting up to about a foot or more. But there's some pretty impressive totals further to the east of that as well. Denver, you're in this region right here. Local areas could be seeing easily up to 6 inches or more of snow from these upcoming systems. And a few spots a little bit further north could even see up to about, I'd say, 10 inches, maybe even a foot. Sierra Nevada actually looks a little bit better than what I've seen as far as intense snowfall totals. You could still see over a foot within this week, but it's definitely better than seeing 3 or 4 feet within 5 days or so. And then, of course, we have to watch the Great Lakes, but it looks like those totals are a little bit more on the tame side. I think over in these regions, we can deal with about 3 to 6 inches there. It's definitely a lot better than some of the stuff we've seen throughout the season. Of course, towards the UP and Michigan, looks like you guys are going to be getting walloped. Could be seeing 6 to 8, maybe even a foot of snow up there too. Higher totals up towards northern Wisconsin as well. But other than that, I see widespread 2 to 4 inches up towards the Dakotas, maybe towards South Dakota and the southern half of it, maybe getting up to 6 inches. And then other than that, it's pretty tame. If we compare this with the other global models here, like the Canadian, it's pretty similar actually. And the same can be said with the GFS, although the resolution kind of has the snow a little bit further off to the east for the most part, and actually a little bit less on the totals over towards the northeast in particular, which is really interesting. We look at the blender models here. It's a pretty similar look. It's pretty high confidence as far as the snowfall totals. One other concern I do have though is ice. Like right around the Midwest here, especially towards northern Kansas, southern Nebraska here, there's going to be a point where this is going to start out as freezing rain. We could see a few areas here where we could get up to about a tenth of an inch of ice. Nothing major though, nothing that can't be handled. This could hamper road conditions, but beyond that, I'm not super concerned. But that's the end of this video here. I know this was a little bit lengthy. I apologize for that again. Very busy day on my part. I know this upload may be late, so I apologize there. Check out my original YouTube channel to see what I was doing today. So look forward to that. Other than the obvious working my daytime job. But anyways, enough rambling for me. If you liked anything I did in this video, definitely drop me a like. Subscribe if you haven't already. The goal is to get into 300 subs by March. That'll be the 1 year anniversary of my first video on the channel. Sub to my other channel, especially if you're into metal. And other than that, that's it. This has been Metalhead Weatherman. I will see you guys in the next video. Have a good night.